Have been a part of a group or a team at some point in our lives, and more than likely we've been a part of one that didn't work out so well. One of the ways in which it might not have worked out is how your teams dealt with working with their groups and solving problems. Lucky for us all, there are actually some techniques you can use to make that process more fluid and more functional. My name is Chris McCrory, and today we're going to talk about problem solving in groups and teams. First of all, we're going to look at systematic problem solving. More specifically, we're going to look at the reflective techniques, or the reflective thinking sequence. And then after that, we're going to look at what the stages are and how the groups actually solve those problems, and then a fluctuation that's in that process. To begin with, systematic problem solving is the most common way that groups use to think about problems, and it's also been proven by research to come up with the best solutions to those problems. The best systematic approach is the reflective thinking sequence. It's a 7-step process that was created like 80 years ago. It's been going on since then, so it's definitely good. Reflective thinking sequence of 7 steps. You want to define the problem, you want to analyze the problem, you want to establish criteria to that problem, you want to consider solutions, you want to choose your best solution, and then you want to implement the solution, and then finally you want to follow up on your solution and make sure it's working out. When you're looking at defining your problem, you want to be as specific as possible. By doing so, you can come up with a specific problem, and then that'll allow you to narrow down what your solution will be to that problem. An example here is, how can you reduce employee turnover? It's really broad, it's not very effective. But then you come up with, how can we reduce turnover among employees? It focuses on one specific area of that turnover, and that'll allow you to come up with that solution much more easily. Next, you want to analyze the problem. This basically means that you're going to attempt to find the causes or like the reasons why it exists. The best thing to do is ask questions involving that problem, both positive and negative. You can use some, like, how bad is the problem, or why does the problem need to be fixed? And then also, does anything good come from the current situation? By using both of those types, you'll be able to come up with a solution that hits both of those and it'll keep the good old stuff with the new stuff. Next, you want to establish criteria for your solutions. You don't want to rush through this. A lot of teams rush through problem solving and try and come up with a solution as quick as possible. You really need to take some time and think about it and identify what you're trying to achieve through your solution. You basically want to set goals for your team. Next, you can consider possible solutions. You want to generate as many ideas during this stage as you can, and you want to limit any kind of criticism. This will make sure that group members don't feel like they're pressured to not talk because they're going to get shot down. If they feel like they're open and they can talk freely, they'll give you ideas, and a lot of times you can come up with ideas based off of their ideas that you can then generate to the group. Next, you want to decide on your solution. You want to narrow the big group down based on these 3 areas. Will it come up with all the criteria that you previously set? Can the group implement the solution? And then also, are there any serious disadvantages? If any of these aren't met, you got to throw it out and start over. It's just not going to work. Second to last, you want to implement your solution. This basically means put it into motion and make it work. It's a complicated procedure, and it can be somewhat long, but there are some steps involved. What you want to do is you want to identify the specific, like what you need to do, the tasks, and then you want to look at the resources that you need. And then you got to delegate who's going to do the tasks and when they're going to do them, where they're going to do them. And then finally, you want to come up with if there's any emergencies. For example, if you have a group member who's sick, or you're going over budget, or you're going over your time limit, all those things you can plan for ahead of time and make your solution getting that much easier. And after you've come up with your solution, you want to follow up on that solution. You need to come back after you've implemented it a little while down the road and then be like, is there anything we can do to make it even better than it already is? Come up with adjustments. Now that we've looked at some ways in which groups actually come up with the problem and the solution, we're going to look at how the group members work together. This is done through the stages of the group problem solving. The first one is the orientation phase, the conflict phase, the emergence phase, and the reinforcement phase. For the orientation phase, this is when basically you're testing the waters. You don't know your group members real well, but you're generally pretty polite and cautious, and you're hesitant to form any opinions right away. Next is the conflict phase. This is where you come up with all your ideas and you pick your defense, or your stance. You pick what position you're going to have, and there's a lot of disagreement. It can get kind of negative, but you want to keep it as constructive as possible. Next is the emergence phase. This is when the disagreement kind of disappears and you start coming up with some compromises to what you want to go with your solutions. And then a lot of times your positions are loosened. You kind of back off even if you do have your own views. Finally is the reinforcement phase. This is when the group comes together and they fully support their solution. The entire group accepts it and will endorse it. Now there's a fluctuation in this process. As you can see, it kind of goes in a circle, but it also you can get stuck in the conflict stage or the emergence stage, and then it also can go back and forth in between. So it's not a perfect process. As you can see, as you probably already know, problem solving is not a perfect science. It can go anywhere. There are a lot of different ways to go about it. Hopefully some of these techniques that I've taught you today will help you go throughout your future groups and teams and make those problems and solutions as easy to find as possible. So, thanks.